The Buddha said, Purna, you have asked why in fundamental purity the mountains, the rivers, and the great earth suddenly arise. Have you not often heard the thus common expound upon the wonderful light of the enlightened nature and the bright wonder of the fundamental enlightenment? Purna said, Yes, world honored one. I have often heard the Buddha expound upon this subject. The Buddha said, You speak of the light of enlightenment. Is it that the natural light is called enlightenment? Or are you saying that enlightenment is initially without light and that then there is a so called brightening of the enlightenment? Purna said, If the absence of light is called enlightenment, then there is no light whatever. The Buddha said, If there is no bright enlightenment without light added to it, then it is not enlightenment with it, and it is not with light without it. The absence of light is not the still bright nature of enlightenment either. The nature of enlightenment is essentially bright. It is false for you to make it bright enlightenment. Enlightenment is not something that needs to be made bright, for once that is done, an object is established because of this light. Once an object is falsely set up, you as a false subject come into being. In the midst of what is neither the same nor different, difference blazes forth, and what is different from that difference becomes a sameness. Because of the difference, once sameness and difference are created, then due to them what is neither the same nor different is further established. This turmoil eventually brings about weariness. Prolonged weariness produces defilement. The combination of these in a murky turbidity creates affliction with respect to wearisome defilement. Arisal is the world, stillness is emptiness, emptiness is sameness. The world is difference. What is neither sameness nor difference is the actual conditioned dramas. The insurrection of bright enlightenment and dark emptiness sets them in a perpetual rotation. Thus there is a pervasiveness of wind which supports the world. Because emptiness produces movement, hardened light sets up a solidity which is the store of metal. Bright enlightenment makes this hardness. Thus there is a pervasiveness of metal which secures the lens. Obstinate attachment to unenlightened awareness results in the formation of metals, while the vibration of illusory awareness causes wind to rise up. The wind and metal rub together, thus there is the light of fire which is changeable by nature. The brightness of the metal produces moisture, and from the light of fire steam arises. Thus there is the pervasiveness of water which encompasses realms in the 10 directions. Fire rises and water falls, and the combination sets up a solidity. What is wet becomes the oceans and seas, what is dry becomes the continents and islands. Because of this, fire often rises up in the oceans, and on the continent the streams and rivers ever flow. When the power of water is less than that of fire, high mountains result. So it is that mountain rocks fire off sparks when struck and become liquid when melted. When the power of earth is less than that of water, the outcome is grasses and trees. So it is that groves and meadows turn to ashes when burned and wood water when twisted. A falseness is produced with the interaction as the seas, and from these causes and conditions comes the continuity of the world. Moreover, Purna, the false brightness is none other than the mistake of adding light to enlightenment. After the falseness of an object is established, the faculty of understanding cannot transcend it. Due to this cause and conditions, hearing does not go beyond sound, and seeing does not surpass form. Forms, smells, tastes, and objects of touch, six falsenesses are realized. Because of them there is division into seeing, sensation, hearing, and knowing. Similar karma binds together. Union and separation bring about transformation. One sees that a bright spot is generated, and the sight of the bright spot conception comes into being. Differing views produce hatred. Similar views create love. The flow of love becomes a seed, and the conception is drawn into the womb. Intercourse happens with a mutual attraction of similar karma, and so they are the causes and conditions that create the kalala, the abuddha, and the rest. The womb-born, egg-born, moisture-born, and transformation-born come about in response. The egg-born come from thought. The womb-born are due to emotion. The moisture-born arise from union, and transformations occur through separation. Emotion, thought, union, and separation go through further changes, and from all the karma received, one either rises or sinks. From these causes and conditions comes the continuity of living beings. Prana, thought, and love become bound together so that people love each other and cannot bear to be apart. As a result, the world has been an endless succession of births of parents, children, and grandchildren, and the basis for all of this is desire and greed. Greed and love feed on one another until greed becomes insatiable. As a result, in the world, all the sentient beings born of eggs, worms, moisture, and transformation tend to devour one another for the nourishment of their bodies to the extent that their strength permits. And the basis for all of this is killing and greed. A person is a sheep. The sheep dies and becomes a person. The person dies and becomes a sheep, and it goes on that way through 10 births and more. Through death after death and birth after birth, they come back to eat one another. The evil karma becomes innate and exhausts the bounds of the future, and the basis for all of this is stealing and greed. You owe me a life, I have to repay my debt to you. From these causes and conditions, we pass through hundreds of thousands of ends in a sustained cycle of birth and death. You love my mind, I adore your form. From these causes and conditions, we pass through hundreds of thousands of ends in a sustained mutual entanglement. Killing, stealing, and lust are themselves the basic rules. From these causes and conditions comes the continuity of karmic retribution. Therefore, Purna, the three kinds of upside-down continuity come from the light which is added to enlightenment. With this false enlightening of the knowing nature, subjective awareness gives rise to objective appearances. Both are born of false views, and from this falseness, the mountains, the rivers, and the great earth, and all conditioned appearances unfold themselves in a succession that recurs in endless cycles. Purna said, if this wonderful enlightenment, basic, miraculous enlightened brightness, which is neither greater than nor less than the mind of the first command, abruptly brings forth the mountains, the rivers, and the great earth, and all conditioned appearances, then now that the world, the thirst come one, has attained the wonderful, empty, bright enlightenment, will the mountains, the rivers, and the great earth, and all conditioned habitual outflows arise again. The Buddha said to Purna, consider, for example, a person who has become confused in a village, mistaking south for north. Is this confusion the result of confusion or of awareness? Purna said, this person's confusion is the result neither of confusion nor of awareness. Why? Confusion is fundamentally baseless. So, how could it arise because of confusion? Awareness does not produce confusion. So, how could it arise because of awareness? The Buddha said, if a person who is aware points out the way to the person who is in the midst of confusion and makes him aware, then do you suppose, Purna, that once the person is over his confusion, he could lose his sense of direction again in that village? No, world-honored one. Purna, the first commands of the 10 directions are the same way. Confusion is groundless and ultimately empty in nature. There had basically been so confusion, it merely seemed as if there were confusion and enlightenment. When the delusion about confusion and enlightenment is ended, enlightenment does not give rise to confusion. It is also like a person with an eye ailment who sees flowers in space. If he gets rid of his eye ailment, the flowers in space will disappear. If he were so stupid as to quickly return to the spot where the flowers disappeared and wait for them to reappear, would you consider that person to be stupid or smart? Purna said, originally there weren't any flowers in space. It was through a falseness of the thing that they were produced and extinguished. To see the disappearance of the flowers in space is already upside down. To wait for them to reappear is sheer madness. Why bother to determine further if such a person is stupid or smart? The Buddha said, since you explain it that way, why do you ask if the wonderful enlightened bright emptiness can once again give rise to the mountains, the rivers, and the great earth? The rivers and the great earth. It is like a piece of ore containing gold and a mixture of other metals. Once the pure gold is extracted, it will not become an ore again. It is like wood that has been burned to ashes. It will not become wood again. The Bodhi and Nirvana from Buddha's the third come ones are the same way. Purna, you also asked whether the natures of water and fire would not destroy each other if the natures of earth, water, fire, and wind were all perfectly fused and pervaded by the Dharma realm, and whether subtle emptiness and the great earth would not be incompatible if both pervaded the Dharma realm. For example, Purna, the substance of emptiness is not the myriad things, and yet it does not prevent the inclusion of all appearances within it. Do you know the reason why, Purna? The empty space is bright on a sunny day and dark when the sky is clouded. It moves when the wind rises up. It is fresh when the sky clears. It is turbid and hazy when the weather is full. It is obscure when a dust storm breaks out. It casts a bright reflection of a pool of clear water. What do you think? of these conditions which come into existence at different places. Are they created from these conditions themselves, or do they find their origin in emptiness? If they arise from those conditions, Purna, then on a sunny day, since the sun is bright, all the worlds of the 10 directions should take the form of the sun. Then, how does it happen that on a sunny day one still sees the round sun in the sky? If emptiness is bright and emptiness itself should shine, how does it happen that when there is a covering of clouds and fog, there is no light in evidence? You should know that brightness is not the sun, is not emptiness, and is not other than the emptiness and the sun. The truly wonderful enlightened brightness is the same way. If your karma finds expression in emptiness, then emptiness will appear. If your karma finds expression in one or another of birth and death, fire or wind, that one will appear. If your karma finds expression in them all, they will all appear. How can they all appear? Suppose, Purna, the sun's reflection appears in a single body of water, and two people gaze at it both at the same time. Then one person walks east and the other walks west, each person still looking in the water will see a sun go along with him, one to the east and one to the west, seemingly without there being any fixed direction for the movement of the sun's reflection. You should behavior the question and say, if there is one sun, how can it follow both ruler? Since the sun is a double, then why does only one appear in the sky? This is just to revolve in falseness because it cannot be proved. Contemplate the fundamental falseness of appearances. They are just like flowers that acquire up in space and produce an empty fruit. Why? Then investigate the meaning of their formation and disappearance. Contemplate the fundamental truth of the nature. It is solely the wonderful enlightened brightness, the wonderful enlightened bright mind. Originally, it is neither water nor fire. Why, then, ask about incompatibility? Purna, you think that form and emptiness overcome and destroy one another in the treasury of the first come one. Thus, the treasury of the first come one accordingly appears to you as a form and emptiness throughout the Dharma realm. And so within it the wind moves, emptiness is still, the sun is bright, and the clouds are dark. The reason for this lies in the delusion of living beings who have turned their backs on enlightenment and joined with dust. Thus, the wearisome defilements come into being now, and mundane appearances exist. With the wonderful brightness that is not extinguished and not produced, one unite. With the treasury of the first come one is the unique and wonderful enlightened brightness which completely illuminates the Dharma realm. That is why within it the one is limitless. The limitless is one. In the small appears the great, in the great appears the small. Unmoving in the Bodhimanda, yet pervading the 10 directions. My body contains the 10 directions and endless the emptiness. On the tip of a single hair appear the lands of the jeweled kings, stating a mote of dust. I turn the Great Dharma will destroy the defilements and unite with enlightenment. So, through suchness, the wonderful enlightened bright nature comes into being. The treasury of the third come is the fundamental, wonderful, perfect mind. It is not the mind, nor emptiness, nor earth, nor water, nor wind, nor fire. It is not the eyes, nor the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. It is not form, nor sound, smells, tastes, objects of touch, and dogmas. It is not the realm of eye consciousness, nor any other up to and including the realm of mind consciousness. It is not understanding, nor ignorance, nor the evening of understanding or ignorance, nor any other, up to and including old age and death, and the ending of old age and death. It is not suffering, nor accumulation, nor extinction, nor the way. It is neither knowing nor in attaining. It is not Dana, nor Shiva, nor Vaira, nor Shanti, nor Dhyana, nor Prana, nor Paramita, nor any gung, nor any other. It is not the Tathagata, nor the Arhats, nor Samyak Sambodhi, nor Parinirvana, nor eternity, nor bliss, nor true self, nor purity. Therefore, it is neither mundane nor transcendental, since the treasury of the first common is the fundamental brightness of the wonderful mind. It is the mind, it is emptiness, it is earth, it is water, it is the wind, it is fire, it is the eyes, it is the ears, nose, tongue, body, the tongue, the body, and the mind. It is form, it is sounds, smells, tastes, objects of touch, and dramas. It is the realm of eye consciousness, and so forth up to and including the realm of mind consciousness. It is understanding and ignorance, and the ending of understanding and ignorance, and so forth up to and including old age and death, and the ending of old age and death. It is suffering, it is accumulation, it is extinction, and it is the way. It is knowing and attaining. It is Dana, it is Shiva, it is Viraya. It is Shanti, it is Dhyana, it is Prana, and it is Paramita, and so forth up to and including the Tathagata, the Arhats, Samyak Sambodhi, Parinirvana, eternity, bliss, true self, and purity. It is both mundane and transcendental, since the treasury of the first common is the wonderful brightness of the fundamental mind. It is apart from ease and is not. It is identical with ease and is not. How can living beings in the three realms of existence on the level of worldliness and the sound hearers and those enlightened to conditions on the level of transcendence make suppositions about the supreme body of the first come one with the minds that they know of and enter the knowledge and view and vision of the Buddha through the medium of worldly language and expressions. For example, lutes, flutes, and guitars can make wonderful sounds, but if there are no skilled fingers to play them, their music will never come forth. You and I, living beings, are the same way. The precious enlightened mind is perfect in everyone. Thus I press my finger upon it, and the ocean impression emit light. You move your mind, and the wearisome defilements spring up. It is all because you do not diligently seek the as a past enlightened way, but a fond of the lesser vehicle and are satisfied with little attainment. Purna said, I am non-dual and complete with the first come's perfect brightness of the precious enlightenment. The true wonder of the pure mind, but long ago I was victimized by false thoughts that have no beginning, and I have long endured the turning wheel of rebirth. Now I have attained the sagely vehicle, but it is not yet fundamental. It is not ultimate. The world honored one has completely extinguished all falseness and obtained wonderful true eternity. I venture to ask the first come one why all living beings exist in falseness and conceal their own wonderful brightness so that they keep drowning in this deluge. The Buddha said to Purna, although you have cast off doubts, you still have not ended residual delusions. I will now empty void, a worldly event in questioning you. 4:101